I'm from the University of Cambridge in the Department of Architecture, and I've been working in the field of film and architecture for, well, over 30 years now, far too long. And I've been running workshops like the one we're proposing in Venice for many years. And in fact, last year, I was lucky enough, and I will talk, I will use some of the examples of what we did last year in Venice, part of the Biennale. I was working, I had been asked to run a workshop with for the Singapore Pavilion, and it was a wonderful experience. And I think that what was very interesting is that we had people in Venice and we had people in Singapore, and we were able to work together, which I thought was quite a novel experience, to do a workshop across time zones. It had its own problem, but anyhow, this was quite interesting.
Okay, so the format of the session today is going to be, I'm going to introduce the European Cultural Academy to everyone and talk a little bit about what we do and the kind of the general view of how we work in Venice. It won't be long. I'll try and make it between 5 and 10 minutes. Then I'm going to hand over to Francois. He's going to tell you all about the actual course content and the details. And then we're going to open up to question and answer. If there was a lot of us in this webinar, we might have question and answer through the chat. But actually, if we're relatively few, we could do it live. If you don't mind, that'd be great. So I'm going to share a screen with you now. And if other people join, I'll just let them in as they come along. So let me share this screen with you now. I hope everybody can see this. Francois, is that coming out on full screen? Not yet, right?
No. Yeah, it's fine, yeah.
Okay, that one, okay. So the European Cultural Academy is based in Venice and in Amsterdam. There's another organization called the European Cultural Center, and the difference between us is that the European Cultural Center, if you like, do exhibitions. They have an exhibition center, which is the second largest exhibition center in Venice after the Biennale. And we are, the European Cultural Academy, we are like the educational wing of the European Cultural Center. We run courses in architecture and design. We also run courses in contemporary art and teacher training as well. When we run courses with architecture, we normally work with universities from around the world, and we co-design courses, and we support the programs. So there's a small list there of University of Melbourne, Oxford, Cambridge, University of London, Tartu, William de Kooning Academy. We have many global partners when we work together to produce the studios. I can send you all, as registered participants, a PDF of this presentation afterwards. So I won't read everything word for word. When you're working in Venice with us, you work in patrician palaces on the Grand Canal, generally. Our headquarters is in Palazzo Michele, which is the top left-hand corner of your screen. It's a Gothic and Byzantine palace reformulated under Baroque facade. It's where we have the offices. It's where most lectures take place, and also some practical drawing and design workshops can take place there too. Palazzo Mora, which is in the middle, is the headquarters of the European Cultural Center. It's a big central exhibition space on 4 floors, and it currently has a big fine art exhibition, which is running at the same time as the Biennale, and it also hosts national pavilions. This year it's Palestine, who have a national pavilion within it. We also use Palazzo Bembo, which is on the top right, which is on the Grand Canal. And there's a big collective exhibition there at the moment from Africa. In addition to those three spaces that we generally use, there's also the opportunity to use an outside space, which is the Giardini della Marineressa. And you can see at the bottom a prototype for a Zaha Hadid bridge that she built a couple of years ago. We have access to all those things. We also have access occasionally to the artists and to lecturers who are coming to work with either organization. I won't dwell on this slide. This is a slide that sort of says we have lots of different relationships with different universities, and each studio is very different to each other. This year, we've got Cecilia Alimani. She's the curator of the Biennale of Art, which is happening at the same time as the course we're proposing. And usually students like to go to the Biennale, and we organize that. We have a good relationship with the Biennale. We're part of the Biennale Sessions, which is their education program. So when we take students to the Biennale, we normally have a guide, or we can do a lecture about the history of the Biennale, a number of things, which is in addition to what you might get as a tourist. Next year, there's the Architecture Biennale, and the curator is Leslie Loco, who's a Ghanaian Scottish curator and has worked globally. There's not a theme for next year yet. This year's theme for the Biennale of Art is the Milk of Dreams. So it's about transformation and hybrids and things that are between different states. Also in Venice, there's lots of things in Venice which are not part of the Biennale, which you can see at any time of the year. There's a whole history of the design of glass, which there's a great glass museum on Murano. There's obviously painting from medieval times to the present day. And there's architecture from fishing huts all the way through Gothic, Byzantine, Palladio, Art Deco, all the way through to Carlo Scarpa. And all these things are actual physical things that you can see when you're in the city. We have an educational approach at the European Cultural Academy. We tend not to just have lectures. We like to have active workshops, take students out, do lots of visits, visit museums, look at cultural centers, visit the mainland, go to other cities, and so a kind of really mixed model of informed learning. It's very important to us, though, that the students who finish the course with us do have something for their portfolio and for their professional life that's about to happen. We use lots of different ways of learning with students, theory, practice, and feedback. We use a part-whole model, which is dividing student groups up into different subgroups and then coming together at the end to share the learning experience. You can see lots of students here sharing their results with each other. And we like to have student groups of about 14, if we can, in Venice. And here's just a little bit of the course information, which I can send you later. Normally the courses are 2 to 3 weeks. Normally they run at the same time as the Biennale, which is April to November. We sometimes work in a direct arrangement with a partner university, or we have courses where students pay course fees. The course fee is normally 1,650 euros. And there's a list underneath about what you get for your investment. Obviously, you get tuition from course leaders, important experts from around the world, visiting lecturers. You get self-directed study time within Venice, a dedicated studio, which you can use for drawing or working on your laptop, professional portfolio development, assessment, feedback, and credits, if they're awarded. a chance to work with some international students. Normally we have more than one course running together. So there's usually an opportunity to share learning with another university, with another group of students, and to work with them. It's very important. A fully equipped studio in the Venetian Palace, and that is the palace on the right-hand side. Some guided visits to the Biennale of Arts, architecture, tickets to museums, places of interest, social evenings, exhibitions, etc. What's not included in the course fees are flights, accommodation, and food. So those are extra to the course. What's really important for us is supporting the course in any way that we can, because we have expertise in Venice. So we will support students with visas, with their visa applications. We'll support students that are looking for accommodation or flights, travel costs. We'll write letters to embassies. We'll generally support the whole the package that's put together. And the design brief, i.e. the content of the course, which is what François is about to talk about, is the most important thing to us. It's really important that the courses are a very high professional level. I won't linger on that slide. And I'm always here, so if you need to get in touch with any questions whatsoever that don't come up as part of this webinar, or you forget to ask, or you think of it later, you can just email me directly at that email address that's on the slide there, alan@europeanculturalacademy.com, and I'll try and answer any questions you have. Okay, so that's just a general overview of the European Cultural Academy. And when we come to the questions at the end, if you have questions about the European Cultural Academy, I'll take those questions. If you have questions about the course, François will take the questions about the course. So I'm going to stop sharing now and pass over to François, I think.
Okay, thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Perfect.
Okay, so basically what I'll do, and I'll do that very quickly, and take you through potentially what the course could be. We have highlighted 2 weeks in September, from the 5th of September to the 16th of September, quite a busy 2 weeks. And I thought that what I would do is that I would take you through sort of a notional program, so as to give an idea of what the course would be about. So you've seen on the flyer that we would start with trying to understand Venice for the movies, Venice for films, and how movies express characteristic of Venice through structured dramatic narrative. So it's very much by definition, it's a human-centric approach to architecture and cities. So it's if planning and urbanism could be seen as top-down, this is very much a sort of a bottom-up approach, a complementary approach to all the Venice guides, all the numerous history of art volumes, of which there are many. So it's sort of a complementary to all this material which exists already on Venice. And I think very importantly, this is a transferable skill which can be applied to any city. So if we look at Venice, the movie, the very first shot of Venice is by Alexandre Promio, was working with the Lumiere brothers. This is 1896, so quite a long time ago. And this was the beginning of recording of Venice. Although it's a small city, It's the second most film city in Italy after Rome. So there's about 12, according to the IMDb website, there's about 1,200 films, fiction films, part of fiction film, not entirely shot in Venice, but partly shot in Venice. It's not just fiction films, but it's also it's also amateur films. There's a great many amateur films which has been made in Venice, but interestingly, they almost invariably they are of the Piazza San Marco or people in gondola. So they're not actually all that interesting. But if you ask people, I don't know if any of you have watched any films about Venice, but most people would mention, especially architects, would mention at least one, which is a film by Nicholas Roeg with Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland called Don't Look Now. Very an unusual view of Venice, Venice at night, Venice as what I would call an atmosphere, far remote from the crowds in Piazza San Marco, a place where all the canals and bridges lead to nowhere. Very interesting film, of course. But they also documentary, for example, The Ghetto, a film made by a friend of mine, Alan Marcus, is part of a series of Time and Place, and about this area, the Jewish quarter in Venice. And recently also there was by Becca and Lemoine, who are architects who specialize in filmmaking. There's this interesting Homo Urbanus Venetianus, I think it was 2018, which looks at a particular event in Venice, which is Acqua Alta, which is when the sea, in a way, sort of floods the city, and you see here all the tourists, by the look of it, Chinese tourists trying to cope with the flooding. But let's hear from Suzanne Sontag, who did a very interesting little film about Venice, about how we could look at the city.
Venezia è una città che persino gli italiani visitano come se fosse una città straniera. In quanto agli stranieri, esiste ogni tipo di straniero. Ciascuno porta un suo omaggio, la sua ammirazione, la sua curiosità, la sua ansia, il suo compiacimento, la sua avidità. Il desiderio di essere a Venezia. Il desiderio di essere stato a Venezia.
So what Suzanne Sontag tells us here is that even Italian in some ways feel foreigners in Venice, but that we all feel that Venice belongs to us to a certain extent, and we all bring to Venice our own feelings. So to a certain extent, it's a place that belongs to the collective imagination of the world. So a place which in some ways transcends time and space, certainly a very special place. She also makes the point later on in the film that there is a special kind of tourist attracted above all to Venice, the melancholy tourist. For that reason, a special tourist predestined to Venice. Venice is a capital of melancholy. And if I can think of a film which translates that idea of melancholy, it would probably be Death in Venice, which the film that most people would have seen, Luchino Visconti, 1971. And that we know that the broader horizon of the sea support the mood of melancholy, both in film, but also in urbanism. And here is Aschenbach, played by Dick Burgard, who is sort of slumped on the armchair, on the deck chair, and he's sort of in the final breath of his life. He's dying, and he's sort of, there's that sort of paradigm of in terms of melancholy, is that we know that the edge of the sea, the boat disappears, the sun sets down. There's a sort of feeling of potentially a feeling of death coming through, and this is quite the case here. This is the young man that Aschenbach fell in love, Tadji. This is his lasting vision as he died, possibly of melancholia. There's also the wonderful Mahler's Fifth Symphony in the background, so late romantic, which heightened the feeling, this feeling of melancholia. But of course, a great many films are basically about romance, and this is sort of a small collection of it. And if you visit Venice, you know, as a couple, being on the gondola is a wonderful thing. Like we saw Bruce Willis, but it's also not necessarily a place where in fact a place which can undo couples. Indeed, the contrast of Venice beauty with one's feeling perhaps of despair can be fatal, especially if all around you you see people who are having so much fun. In here we can see the it's a very interesting film, 1955, so it's quite an old film, but wonderful photography by David Lean in summertime. Katharine Hepburn's first time visiting Venice, and he uses here the wonderful architecture of across Venice. There's an island called Giudecca, and this is a Renatore church by Palladio, which essentially David Lean uses that to shows that she has extraordinary feeling, which are being matched and heightened by the Palladian architecture. This is what I would call a form of spatially organized narrative, where the architecture and the city plays a very important role, and can only be assured that the filmmaker would have framed this extraordinarily carefully, including the little branches which are coming down into the water, so nothing would have been left to chance. So if we think of the characterization of Venice in the movie, unsurprisingly, the overall picture, my assessment of it is quite different from other cities. While, for example, London emerges as the archetype of the modern civic dystopian city, Venice, most Venice films can't resist its picture postcard prettiness. This is why so many foreign films are made in Venice or have scenes set in Venice. It's often been suggested that places are glorified by the presence of film star, but in my view, it doesn't apply to Venice. On the contrary, and if you can bear it, it's a very bad film, which how Bruce Willis and Michelle Pfeiffer in The Story of Us are in fact dwarfed by Venice, magnificent. And if you can't compete with Venice, you can call on James Bond, of course, played by Daniel Craig in Casino Royale, who engineers destruction, spectacular collapse of Palazzo Morosini in the Canal Grande. Hopefully, I would have left untouched the Palazzo Michele, where the ECA has currently stands. But I think some of the most interesting film are what I call insider movies. There's a film by Andrea Segre, which is issued last year, and he lives not far from Venice. This film is called Welcome Venice, what I call an insider movie, which is very much reflecting on what to do with houses in Venice. The pressure being that there are people like, there are three brothers, one of them died during the course of the film, and the two brothers have different views as how to deal with the family house, one of them wants to keep living in it. The other one says it has to become an Airbnb. So it's reflecting really on modern Venice and what to do with the architecture and the urbanism, whether Venice becomes in a way a museum or is it still a living place. And I think here in this case we would hope to have a conversation with Andrea Segre and screen his film. There's currently an outdoor cinema being built, and this is one of the films that we could screen and have potentially a public conversation about some of the issues brought about by Welcome Venice with Andrea Segre. From continuity editing to montage is simply that at the end of the first part of the first week, we would move away from fiction films. We're not going to make fiction films. The course is not a filmmaking course, but we move away from this idea of illusion of continuing action, continuous action, which is continuity editing, and we move on to montage, which is a different form, a different family of screen language. It's assembly of shots, but doesn't necessarily seek to create an illusion of continuous action, which is used in city symphonies, which I will mention in a minute. We'll talk. So one of the important aspects is observational cinema. The French poet Paul Éluard talks about voir, c'est comprendre, which means that to see is to understand. We can sometimes to see for real rather than just look and not see. And this is so I will use some of the little clips we've made in Venice. They're very short clips. We put the camera in various places in the city, and then we analyze it afterwards. So here's a particular example, which we did last year. It's very short. So the city is a practice place, and those people in a way are practitioners of space, and it's been sometimes suggested by people like de Certeau that their intertwining paths of pedestrians are a form of unrecognized poems because it eludes legibility. We are neither author nor spectator until, in this case, a camera is there to help us to read and understand the spatial practice of everyday life in the city. And although not very much happened in this short clip, we still have a beginning, a middle of an end. This man arrives, this is the beginning, and then there's the boy, and then the woman on the left, and then she leaves. So this is the end. So it's a sort of, clearly it's not a great drama, but we can see that this is now also a place where this is early in the morning. These people are clearly Venetian. They are hurrying to do their shopping before Venice is invaded by hordes of tourists. So this is a sort of a very important moment, and walking is the key, a key part of Venice's life, together with the Vaporetto. The Calais is shot straight on, a la Wes Anderson. It's becoming now a place of expectation because we know that more actors are about to come through in a few seconds. It tells us that in a way, a film like that, the city is like a theater of everyday life, if only we can recognize it. And I think that what is very important in all of those courses is you film something, and then an even more important part is to try to understand what you have filmed. And I think to have the discussion, and this is why there are all the scripts which are built into the schedule. Of course, what makes even a very anodyne and simple shots like we've just seen important is this idea of photogeny, which is a mysterious transformation that occurs when everyday objects or scenes are revealed as if anew in a photograph or on the motion picture screen. Indeed, what happened is that in real life, our field of perception is almost infinite and deployed on a background horizon. And then we need to really restrict this field of vision as to intensify its expression. And this is what what cinema does, but this is what art does also in general. Think of painting, etc. It's sort of restricting the field of vision. So the second part, still in the first week, is what we call city Centronieta, sort of creating small city symphonies, which are montage-based films without human leads, where the city is a subject. City symphonies that aim to construct composite cinematic poems that encapsulate the dynamics of the modern metropolis. That's the tradition of the 1920s with the Soviet city symphonies with men with a movie camera, and then by Vertov, for example. So I'll show you a couple of very small examples. So what we do is that students are able to reuse lots of those little clips and make, so you'll see again, Carola has used to make a 1 minute piece here using the clip we've seen before. Again, we have this theme of the shopping trolley on wheels. We see that again the same scene, which is now integrated in a larger piece. And the piece is essentially about the shopping trolley. So this is a montage, the form of montage, which is organized around this idea of wheeling something around. So each shot is built in that fashion and assembled in a way. Here you will see even something very small. This man is going out of the passage. And you will see here, if you notice, there's a pigeon going through. And I think here it's a pity that she, Karina, cut the shot a little bit too short, because it would be nice to see the pigeon as is following the man. And what's happening in all those little observation films is that unwittingly you see things that you would only notice afterwards by analyzing the screen and what you have done, like in this case, the pigeon, which in fact I only noticed recently. Now let me say something about working with music and sound. We will have a workshop with musicians and sound designers. I think it's very important. And here also because of copyright issue, you cannot use your favorite track without asking at least for copyright. And here we see this again, a 1 minute assembly montage. This time it's about boats in Venice, and I'll comment on the music. so obviously this is a piece about the frenetic pace at which all those boats are going around the Venice canals. Really, sort of, it's the equivalent of cars, but on the water. And here too, because I always give a lecture about sound, I always say, well, you have to either create your own sound or ask permission. And here, what Shumaya did is that she recorded the sound of people playing live on the Piazza San Marco in a cafe, and asking permission, and they gave her permission, and then she used that. So that's a very inventive way. And by the way, all those little short films are made in a day. So this is for somebody like Shumaya who had never made any film. It's really quite astonishing what can be done in a very short time. So sound, very important. And then we arrive at the second week. The second week, this is much more about developing something, a larger project. So the first week you do a series of short exercise with conversation and crit, etc., and the opportunity to also we screen films. We have discussion potentially with filmmakers, and in the second week we start on the Monday with a symposium on what is Venice urbanism, what are the challenges of Venice. And it gives the opportunity to work on the third experiment, which is should be a 3-minute piece. So it's a larger piece. So you would have learned about observation, you would have learned about montage and city symphony, and some of the themes, possible themes, would be you can do a larger city symphonies. You can study everyday urban life, create an urban taxonomy of Venice, sort of say a series of doors, bridges, in taxonomy in that sense. You can reflect on the idea of Venice, a 15-minute city, or even a 5-minute city, which is a very important theme currently debated by all the cities in the world, which is to reduce transport, reduce pollution. I think Venice potentially is a very interesting model for that. I mean, that became quite famous about in Paris when the Paris mayor, Anne Hidalgo, made that central to her re-election pitch 2 years ago. People started to reflect the city in a different way. Because they had the experience of the lockdown, they rediscovered the neighborhood. This would be part of cinema as a form of urban modeling. You can, of course, this idea of creative geographies, you can create a new geography of the city by taking clips in many different parts. And then we can reflect on this idea of local versus global. So this is the last part, and this is us last summer in Venice at the Biennale. It was a small group in Venice had just been unlocked from the lockdown, so not many people could come. But then we had this very interesting experience of working with colleagues in Singapore. So we constantly had this sort of Zoom and joint crit between Venice and Singapore. And this is the students in Singapore. There was a group of 10. So altogether we had about 15 people. The challenge, of course, was to find times where we could all speak to each other. And I'll just show you a piece that we did, because at the end, using the material which was shot in the previous exercises, we asked students both Venice and Singapore to work in teams to create a new form of city symphony. made up from shots from both cities. So the last exercise asked to reflect on the art of future living, which I say that in the age of globalization, pushing to the limit this idea of creative geography across the globe, and to imagine new spaces in which we might live together, however remotely. So this theme of how we might live together was, of course, last year was the theme of the Biennale. So we were reflecting on that. So I'll play that. It's very short again. So this is shots from both Venice and Singapore to creating a new city. Okay, so that was this, and we did 5 or 6 short films, which was very interesting to see student participants working across the globe and working together. Again, this was a very short exercise put together in a day. Okay, so this is the end of my little presentation. Thank you for listening and watching. I will now stop sharing, and if you wish, we can have a conversation, or I'm happy to take questions.
I think as we're just a few of us, if you want to ask a question, please unmute yourself and ask it live. If you don't feel able to do that, then please write the question in the chat, and we'll try and answer it from there.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine.
Hello, my name is Mengyun Liu, and I was graduated from Shanghai Theatre Academy from the Department of Stage Design, and I'm going to have a Master of Architecture program in University College of London in September, and my major is design for performance and interaction. So I would like to ask, because I'm not a student that from an architecture background until now, so I would like to ask, do I have to be very professional in the field of architecture to join these courses, or I don't have to?
No, you don't have to. In fact, you have seen when I was showing that first little clip about observation, I was looking at this little piece of the city being like a theater of everyday life, where people played themselves, and where people were actors in it. So in a way, there's this idea of performance, I think, is also very important in that the sort of observation of spaces that we do when we do this exercise. And I think that I don't know what flyer you've seen, probably many of them, but it does show that this is open to students and participants in many different disciplines: architecture, urbanism, ethnography, film, media, theater, etc. So it's the interesting thing here is that I think the interdisciplinarity is key to have an interesting group of people. It's important. So you'd be very welcome. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to hear. Yeah.
From the European Cultural Academy point of view, some of our courses are really focused, and you do need to have a background in certain things. Other ones are very open. And Françoise is running one of those very open courses. And what's great about that is people from different disciplines get to work together and they learn off each other. So that's good from our point of view too. Thank you for the question, really great.
Yeah, and I have another question, is that because I'm currently in Shanghai and we are in lockdown, so I'm not sure if I can come to Venice personally in September. So could you please tell me more about how can we attend the courses online? So and since I have already read the descriptions of these courses, that if we cannot attend personally, we will exploring our own city. So how does it work? Can you share some details?
I can. Yeah. I'll take it first, Françoise, and then pass it over to you. From our point of view, we are considering the idea of blended learning situation where some students are in Venice and some students are able to explore the same themes, but where they are in their own city. I have to say that we don't know about Shanghai in the future. We don't know when the lockdown will finish, when people will be able to travel. And from the experience in Italy last year, we were also in lockdown, quite a strict lockdown, until a certain point, and then suddenly we opened again, and everything became possible. Obviously, we can't have everybody online from our point of view, because there's no point in being in Venice. But if we could have a blended situation, that would be great. What you're saying, though, about moving over to UCL might fit for you. You might be able to stop off in Venice before the UCL course starts, because they normally start late September. But I don't know. Françoise, what do you think?
No, I think it's a concern. It's a good question. I know the situation in China. I currently have 3 Chinese PhD students. And last year I did a whole workshop of the same sort of nature that I discussed today, where I was in Cambridge and all the students were actually in Nanjing. And this was very successful. But the current situation with Shanghai is quite different, because as I understand it, at the moment you would not be able to go and film in the city. Which is,
yeah.
So I think that unless you film outside your window, and I think you might be even discouraged to open your window, you may find it very difficult to do the course. So I think in that sense, if Shanghai is still in lockdown and you are in Shanghai, you can't do the course. So the only way in this case would be what Alan suggests, which is basically leave China, leave Shanghai, and come to Venice en route to England, in any case, if you are going to do this course in the UK.
I think we won't be able to answer that question fully until we see how the situation develops. So you know, we'll just have to see how it unfolds, the situation. And because Francois's course is in September, we have some time, to try and work that out. If we keep in contact, we can try our best to make something work.
Yeah, I think things will be better in September, different from now.
Yeah.
Well, I hope for people of Shanghai as well. Yes.
Yeah, our sympathies to the people of Shanghai right now.
Mm.
Yeah. Any other questions? No? Well, if we could stop there, and this session was being recorded. I hope no one minds that. There's no images that have been recorded, but your questions have been recorded. We intend to edit the video, and then it will be available on YouTube so that you'll be able to watch it back again, and you'll be able to get email addresses from that YouTube link. And you can ask questions to me anytime, or to Francois from that. And we will also be able to let other people who are interested see the video. So if there are no more questions, then thank you very much for participating and turning up just to see the presentation. And we hope we can see you either in China or in Venice for September. We've taken a record of your emails so we can stay in touch, and let's hope that something can come of this, something productive. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.